Hey guys, Spud here, and today we have a cold start, taxi, and takeoff tutorial for the DCS F4U-1D Corsair from Magnitude 3. When it comes to learning to start up the F4U Corsair here in DCS, I highly recommend that you start off at a land base, so that way you can hear all of the very subtle sounds that will help you start up the aircraft as quickly and efficiently as possible that would normally be kind of overridden by the sea state sounds and the engine sounds of the Essex class aircraft carrier. And on top of that, I also wanted to say that in my review video that I posted recently, I think I was a little too harsh on the flight model. As I've been flying the Corsair more and more and more, I'm starting to develop more and more confidence in the authenticity of the flight model of this aircraft, even at lower gross weights. So just keep that in mind in case that is holding you back from jumping in both feet into the Corsair. So let's get started with the tutorial. For today's tutorial, we're going to be utilizing the startup procedure laid out in the real-life VOT F4U-1D Corsair flight manual, as I find this procedure is a little more effective and a little easier to understand than the one in the early access manual provided with the aircraft. And because we're at an airfield, let's go ahead and get our wings unfolded as early as possible here to increase our visibility around the aircraft. We'll first come down to the left-hand console here, and we'll move all the way aft, and we will unlock our wings, and bring the wing fold mechanism to the forward spread position. Keep in mind, you can definitely unfold your wings without the hydraulic pressure generated by the engine. It just takes a little bit longer. And I do hope in the future here, Magnitude 3 gives us the option to be able to spawn in at an airfield with the wings unlocked, with the wings unfolded and locked, due to the fact that a number of the land-based Marine Corps squadrons in the Southwest Pacific had their wings permanently unfolded and locked, and removed a bunch of the wing fold mechanism to save on aircraft weight and maintenance requirements. And once the wings are all the way down, we're going to wait for the wing fold flag to become fully flush with the wing of the aircraft, and we'll move back to the wing fold mechanism, return it to the central neutral position, and we will relock the wings. Keep in mind that if you attempt to taxi or take off with the wings unlocked, you're going to get a very annoying buzzer alarm letting you know that something is definitely wrong. So we'll bring the wing fold mechanism back to the central position, we will relock the wings, and moving forward on the left-hand console, to set up for the actual startup of our engine, we're going to bring the fuel selector to the forward 12 o'clock reserve tank section for engine startup. Next, we'll set up our throttle quadrant for the startup procedure. I highly recommend you have the mixture knob, the blower knob, and the prop lever bound to an axis or keybind on your HOTAS in your home cockpit to make the startup procedure as easy as possible and just generally make flying the aircraft as smooth and easy as possible. Next, we'll make sure that the mixture knob is in the aft idle cut position, the blower knob is in the forward neutral position, the prop lever is in the full down highest RPM setting, and we'll crack the throttle about 1 inch to 1.5 inches here. Next, we'll check to ensure that the magnetos are in the off position in case the ground crew is doing any last-minute checks or maintenance on the aircraft and they have to spin the prop. So this will make sure that the prop does not fire and injure or kill any ground crew within its arc. Next, we'll move over to the right-hand console, and we'll turn the battery switch on, the auxiliary fuel pump on, and we're ready to prime the engine. The F4U-1D Corsair requires between about 5 and 15 seconds of prime, depending on environmental conditions. So we'll split that difference and we'll go for 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Our engine is now primed and ready for startup. We'll make sure that all of the ground crew are outside of the prop arc, and we'll turn the magnetos on to the both position so that way the engine will fire once the prop starts to turn. And we'll make sure that we call out as loud as we can, "Clear prop," before we actually start the engine. Now, the biggest gotcha for the startup procedure occurs right here. If we do not hold the starter switch for long enough as we bring the mixture knob up to the auto rich position, the engine will die on us and we'll have to make another engine start attempt. If this occurs, it's really no problem and you're not going to hurt the engine and you can just attempt it again. So let's go ahead and make an attempt. We'll make sure that we hold our wheel brakes so we don't start to inch the aircraft forward once the engine fires up. And we'll go for the start attempt. Alright, so looks like we failed that start attempt, so no problem, we just released the starter switch a little too early. So we're going to return the mixture knob to the idle cut position. We're going to give the engine a little bit more prime. Let's go for about 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll make sure we hold the start switch a little bit longer as the engine starts to cough itself to life. So let's go for it. And looks like we got it that time, so we're good to go. Now we need to make sure that we retard the throttle to ensure that the engine remains below 1000 RPM for the engine warm-up here. So that way we don't get the engine spinning too fast and damage it due to hydraulic lock with the very cold and viscous oil in the cylinders of the engine. So we'll bring it up just a hair to about 1000 RPM. We're then going to move back to the right-hand console here, and we're going to open up the engine cowl flaps all the way. Those are now fully open, and we're going to make sure that the intercooler and the oil cooler is completely closed in order to speed up the engine warm-up process. I highly recommend that you bind these 3 levers to buttons on your HOTAS to make flying the aircraft as easy and smooth as possible, because you're going to have to be adjusting these 3 levers constantly as you fly the aircraft to avoid damaging your engine. We're going to check the RPM. Looks like it climbed a little on us. We're going to make sure that we get it just a hair below 1000 RPM. We're going to check our oil temperature and pressure, and we can see here that our oil pressure is a little high and over the red line. That's because our oil temperature is a little bit low, so the oil is still very viscous, which is increasing the oil pressure. So as the oil temperature rises up into the green, our oil pressure is going to fall down into the green. We can go ahead and close the starter cover. We're going to turn off the auxiliary fuel pump, and we're going to bring the fuel selector to the main tank position now that the engine is running and good to go. We're going to bring the flaps down to the 30-degree position for takeoff. And we'll go ahead and set our trim for the appropriate takeoff settings. Normally, in order to make the takeoff roll as easy as possible, we're going to set our aileron trim to 6 units of right wing down trim. Our rudder trim, again, is going to be set to 6 units of right hand rudder trim. And our elevator trim is going to be set to 1 unit of nose up trim. We'll make sure that our tail wheel is unlocked for taxi, and we'll make sure that our wings are in fact locked. If the wings were unlocked, we would hear a very annoying buzzing alarm, just in case that alarm is broken for any reason, we need to always check to ensure that our wings are always locked before we start our taxi roll. We can of course turn on internal and external lighting via these panels here and up here, but because we're in the middle of the Mariana Islands and we're very close to enemy positions, and our mission today is going to be very short, we're going to make sure that all of our external lights are going to be off. We'll go ahead and check our warm-up, and it looks like we are just barely starting to get into the green on our oil temperature, and our oil pressure is down below the red line and into the green. One thing I've been having a little bit of trouble here in early access is getting the CHT temperature up into the green, and we'll go ahead and say that we've got that no problem. I also find this to be a little bit of an issue with flying the P-47D. I can never seem to get the CHT up into the green for my engine warm-up. And so we'll go ahead and we'll ignore that for today. Make sure our prop lever is fully forward, and we should be ready to rock and roll for our taxi. Everything is in the green. So for our takeoff today, we're going to be taking off the direction towards our tail here, and when it comes to the taxi, all of your normal tail wheel and tail dragger fundamentals apply here in the F4U Corsair. So we're going to make sure that we have the stick pulled all the way back into our belly, so that way we can keep our tail pinned to the ground as we taxi. This is especially important as we start to increase the power for our taxi, and we'll go ahead and release our brakes. We're just going to slowly roll forward, and I'm going to open up the controls indicator here so that way you guys can see what I'm doing on the controls. And we'll start off our first S-turn off to the right-hand side here. We'll bring the rudders around, and we'll just tap on the right brake. Do another S-turn to the left, and make sure that our taxiway is clear and good to go. Looks like it. And at this point, I'm just going to bring the airplane around to the right-hand side, add a little bit of power, and just keep her coming around. Especially on a soft dirt taxiway like we've got here, it's going to be even more important to hold your stick back the whole time to keep that tail wheel pinned, as you're probably going to need a little bit more power to actually taxi the aircraft effectively, which means you're more in danger of having a tail rise and potentially striking your prop. You guys can see here, the taxi in the Corsair is really just all about using the rudders and a bit of differential braking in order to keep those S-turns going, and then it's really not that hard once you get the hang of it. The big key here is just always make sure that on this very soft ground that you're keeping that tail wheel pinned as well as you possibly can. Another thing to consider here, as you're taxiing on this very soft airfield here on the World War II Marianas map, is you're going to have to use increased RPM, so it's really important to ensure that your oil is fully warmed up before you start your taxi roll, so that way you don't inadvertently damage the engine by having too viscous of oil in your lower cylinders of your R2800 Double Wasp engine. Alright, so we'll get ourselves lined up with the runway. We'll go ahead and just slowly bring her on down to a stop. We'll make sure that the tail wheel is nice and straight here. Now, normally when you're flying a tail wheel airplane, you can definitely feel when that tail wheel is straight, but we taxied straight ahead a little bit there, so it should be straight. We'll go ahead and get the tail wheel re-locked. We'll check our engine instruments. Everything is looking good here. We can see at idle, our oil temperature is up in the green, and our oil pressure is actually down below the red line. And that's okay here, that's to be expected at idle with nice warm oil. So we are good to go there. And when it comes to the engine cowl flaps, we are going to have the cowl flaps closed just slightly, and we're going to have them open by about 2/3, so that looks like about 2/3, so we should be good there. And we're going to bring the oil cooler and intercoolers to the middle neutral position for takeoff. Alright. Now, having the Malcolm hood of your canopy open or closed is optional and up to you, and it's a real hot day here in the Marianas, so let's go ahead and leave it open, as well as allow us for better and quicker emergency egress from the cockpit if required. We're not going to uncage our ADI here until we're up in the air and at a nice level flight attitude, because it's just going to get all jumbled up and knocked out of place anyway on the takeoff roll. So we should be ready to rock and roll, just making sure that we've got our wings locked, our flaps are at 30, and we're good to go. So with that, we're going to hold the brakes with our stick all the way back, and we're going to increase our RPM, and we're going to go for about a 52 manifold inches of pressure takeoff. We'll release the brakes and start our takeoff roll. We're going to neutralize the stick. The tail should naturally come up from the very big flaps on the F4U Corsair. And we'll just let her naturally come up off the ground, keeping some right rudder in there. There we go. Now, big thing with the F4U is to make sure that you don't pull the flaps up too quickly. And we'll make sure we got the gear up as well. We're going to retard the manifold pressure back to about 44 inches, and we're going to bring the RPM back to 2,550, and we're going to start slowly bringing the flap notches up, because if we rip out all the flaps all at once with a big heavy bomb load, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. Slowly working the flaps up. Flaps are all the way up, and we'll retrim her out for straight and level flight. Make sure we have the ball nice and centered, maybe a little bit of extra rudder trim. And you can see, now that we got the flaps all the way up, we are settling a bit. And now we are good to rock and roll. And there we go, guys. That is our startup, taxi, and takeoff tutorial for the DCS F4U-1D Corsair from Magnitude 3. So now that we are up in the air and safe and good to go and heading on out towards our target, let's go ahead and close the canopy. So I hope you guys liked the video, and please like and subscribe, and of course enjoy this beautiful game. Have a good one, guys, and enjoy flying the Corsair.